I'm standing in my brother's living room, frozen in horror, as he yells at his youngest son, the sound of his tiny body crashing to the floor still echoing in my mind. The room is a blur, but the fear in the child's eyes is etched in my memory forever. How did it come to this? My brother, once a victim of our narcissistic mother's neglect, now perpetuating the same cycle of abuse and neglect with his own family. Growing up, my brothers and I were largely left to fend for ourselves. Our mother, consumed by her own world, would lock herself in her room, leaving us to navigate the challenges of childhood alone. My brother, in particular, struggled with anger issues, which often manifested as verbal and physical abuse towards me. I would scream for my mother's help, but she would simply yell from her bedroom to knock it off, leaving me to face my brother's wrath alone. Our father, who only saw us on weekends, tried his best to provide a sense of stability, but it wasn't enough to counteract the damage our mother's neglect had caused. As we grew older, my brother's behavior towards me began to change. When he was 20, he got his 17-year-old girlfriend, now his wife, pregnant, and suddenly, he eased up on me. We started to build a relationship, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, he had turned a corner. They had 3 beautiful boys, and for a while, it seemed like he was trying to be a good father and husband. But, as the years went by, I started to notice a disturbing trend. His anger and hatred, once directed at me, were now being unleashed on his wife and children. My sister-in-law would reach out to me, confiding in me about the abuse and neglect she and the children were suffering. She would tell me about the yelling, the name-calling, and the physical discipline that often left marks on the children's bodies. I would listen, horrified, as she described how my brother would belittle and demean her, making her feel worthless and unappreciated. I warned her, time and time again, that he was turning into our mother, that he was perpetuating the same cycle of abuse and neglect that had damaged us so deeply. But, she loved him, and she wanted to believe that he could change. I remember the day our father passed away, and my brother's true colors were on full display. He tried to keep all of our father's old comic books for himself, intending to sell them and profit from his death. I had to fight him to get my fair share, which I still have safely stored away. When we received our inheritance from our father's IRA, I used mine to pay off my debt and put the rest in savings. My brother, on the other hand, blew his on frivolous things, like a new PC, a gaming laptop, and a trip. He even moved his family into a rental home, sharing it with his wife's sister, because they couldn't afford the rent on their own. About 11 months ago, my sister-in-law reached out to me, desperate and scared. She had left my brother, but only for 3 days, before returning to him. She sent me a series of texts, pouring out her heart, telling me about the abuse and neglect she and the children were suffering. She wrote, "He did something to our youngest son that pushed me past my limit, and the yelling and name-calling is getting worse." She told me about how my brother would spank the children hard, leaving marks on their bodies, and how he would yell at her, calling her names and belittling her. I listened, my heart heavy with sorrow and anger, as she described the heck she was living in. As I read through her texts, I felt a sense of déjà vu. I had lived through this same kind of abuse and neglect, and I knew how hard it was to escape. I told her, "I'm at work and a little distracted, but I want you to know I understand your decision and am sympathetic. Honestly, I wish you the best of luck, and of course, I want what's best for the boys." I wanted her to know that I was there for her, that I understood what she was going through, and that I would support her no matter what. But, as the months went by, things only got worse. My brother's behavior became more erratic, more abusive. My sister-in-law would reach out to me, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. She was trapped, and she didn't know how to escape. I felt helpless, watching from the sidelines as my brother destroyed his family, just like our mother had destroyed ours. Fast forward to the present, my sister-in-law messaged me on my birthday, wishing me a happy belated birthday. She asked if my brother had texted me, and I replied, surprised that he had, and that he had even managed to be civil. But, then she dropped a bombshell. She told me that she was planning to leave him when their lease ended in December. She said, "I don't deserve to be treated the way I am. He doesn't help with the boys or housework. He yells, gives us attitude, and calls us names. My heart sank, knowing that she had finally realized that she deserved better. As I read her message, I felt a mix of emotions. I was sad, knowing that my brother's family was falling apart, but I was also relieved that my sister-in-law was finally taking steps to protect herself and her children. I replied, "I respect any decision you choose to make, you have to do what's best for you and the boys." I'm confused, though, are you saying he just bought a new truck or that he bought tires for his work truck? I was trying to understand the situation, to make sense of my brother's latest selfish decision. My sister-in-law replied, explaining that my brother had bought an 11-year-old truck, despite her telling him to wait. He had sold his gaming laptop, which he had barely used, and spent $370 on new tires for his truck. He still owed $600 for the down payment, but he had chosen to spend the money on himself instead. I was appalled, knowing that my brother was still prioritizing his own desires over the needs of his family. As I read her response, I felt a sense of frustration. Why was my brother so selfish? Why couldn't he see that his actions were hurting the people he loved? I replied, "Oh, okay, gotcha. That's ridiculous, he never should have bought that laptop to begin with. And yeah, I know how that feels. I went through that a lot with my mom. A lot of conflicting and confusing behaviors from her, and it made me feel hopeful and guilty at the same time. I was trying to offer her some perspective, to let her know that she wasn't alone in her struggles. But, as I waited for her response, I couldn't shake off the feeling of sadness and despair. I knew that my brother was beyond help, that he was too far gone to change. And, I worried about my nephews, about the kind of environment they were growing up in, and the kind of men they would become. I wanted my sister-in-law to take the children and leave, to escape the toxic cycle of abuse and neglect that was destroying their lives. As I stand here, frozen in horror, I realize that I have been watching my brother morph into our narcissistic mother for years. And, I'm left wondering, how do you handle the guilt of watching a loved one destroy their family, just like your own family was destroyed? Was I right to cut contact with my mother, and should my sister-in-law do the same with my brother?
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop your verdict in the comments below, subscribe for new stories every single day, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.